specifically calls that piece of property my land. And he's not talking about Charlie Garrett. He's saying this is my land, Jehovah God. And he implies that probably thousands of times throughout the Old Testament. And he has sovereignly taken this land and he has given it to one group of people. He's given it to the nation of Israel. It says in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 4, and because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their descendants after them. And he brought you up out of Egypt with his presence, with his mighty power, driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in and to give you their land as an inheritance as it is this day. But like many other issues, we tend to snub God, we spit on his word, and we actively work against his ordinances. The land of Israel, as I've said, belongs to the Jewish people as a heritage forever. But we are currently and actively working to divide the land of Israel. And because of that, the judgment of God is going to fall on all the nations of the world. It says in the book of Job, for behold, in those days, and at that time, when I bring back the captives of Judah and Jerusalem. Guess what? That's the time that we are living in. 14 May of 1948, it began. 7 June of 1967, they recaptured Jerusalem. This is happening right before our very eyes. It says, I will also gather all nations and bring them down to the valley of Jehoshaphat, which is the valley where the Lord judges. And I will enter into judgment with them there on account of my people, my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations. They have also divided up my land. Several things do not matter one bit, not an iota, concerning this verse. First is what anybody here thinks about it. Second is what I think about it. And third, it doesn't matter what anybody else on planet Earth thinks about it. The only thing that matters is what God thinks about it. We are currently working to divide the nation of Israel, the land of Israel, in a search for peace. But the Bible says, as you saw in the book of Job, that instead of peace, we will only find war, destruction, and judgment. Another unfortunate action that man has recently been pursuing is the folly of global warming. 25 years ago in the 70s, it was the folly of global cooling, but now it's global warming. They are attempting to restrict how people live and what they do with what God has given us. People make up these bizarre theories about how we are able to affect global temperatures, despite the evidence always being the opposite, whether it's global cooling or whether it's global warming. And because of following this particular path, the oil that God placed in the earth for our use is considered unclean. The trees that God gave us for houses and for building fireplaces or whatever are used as sacred objects of worship instead of being used with a chainsaw. But God ordained a different path for us in this particular context. He said, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth and subdue it. Have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. King David elaborated on what God ordained in Genesis when he penned the 8th Psalm. It says, what is man that you were mindful of him, and the son of man that you visit him? For you have made him a little lower than the angels, and you have crowned him with glory and honor. You have made him to have dominion over the works of your hands. You have put all things under his feet, all sheep and oxen, even the beasts of the field, the birds of the air, and the fish of the sea that pass through the paths of the seas. Just like the land of Israel and the earth that we blasphemously call mother.